Hi, in this Cinema 4D tutorial I'll show you how to build and set up this rocket animation. I'll take you through the whole process, modelling and animating the rocket using the volume builder, creating the flames and star field, and then lighting and texturing with Octane. I've included links below to the textures and HDR files I've used, which are available to download for free from Polygon. Let me know in the comments below if there are any other posts of mine you'd like to see a tutorial on, and please remember to like and subscribe and you'll get notifications of when I upload new videos. Okay, let's get started. Right, so let's start just by bringing in a sphere. I'm going to make this a radius of 160 and I want to up the segments to quite a lot, to like 200, just so I can keep it smooth. I'm going to make that editable, and then in the Y I'm going to increase the scale by 160, so let's say about there. Then I'm going to bring in a taper, put that underneath the sphere and say fit to parent, so it kind of covers the shape. I'm going to make the height about 300 and then the strength 40, and then what I want to do is go into a side view. I'm going to move this up so it's just covering the tip of the this kind of like egg shape. Okay, and we can hide that for now, and this is going to be the hull of the ship. Now I'm going to use volume builder because I like it for kind of creating these kind of toy like shapes. So let's create a cube, and I'm going to give it a height of like 100 and then make this maybe like 350 by 350, and if I go into the side view I'm going to move it down to about at minus 220. Let's move that down a little bit more, and this is where I'm going to kind of chop the bottom off. So let's get a volume builder and mesher and stick the cube in there, and then we're going to subtract the cube from the bottom, and we'll do smoothing and stuff in a little while. Actually, maybe we'll put the voxel size down to like 2. And okay, so what we'll do next is I'm going to cut out the hole at the bottom, because this is going to be where our flames come from, and also I want a kind of hole on the inside, so I'm going to make it a radius of like 90. We'll give it a height of like 320. Then I'm going to bring this down just so it kind of pokes out the bottom. It's not kind of interrupting or poking out the top. Maybe I can move that up just a tiny bit more. Let's bung that in, and we'll call that cut out. And we'll subtract that as well. So we've got that shape going on. We could probably up the segments on here to like 100 just to give it a smooth shape. We're going to add a smoothing on in a little while. And we'll actually copy that, and we're going to cut out our windows. So let's just rotate this by 90 degrees. Give this a radius of like 33. And I'm going to make one like minus 10 on the Y. Duplicate that. Make this one like 90. I'm going to call both of these window. Add them in and subtract both of those as well. So that's our windows cut out. Now the other thing we want is this kind of cone at the top. It's a separate object. So I'm going to duplicate our cube from the bottom, bring that up to the top, and let's say, let me just have a look and see how much I want to cut off of this. Let's see whether actually that might be just enough. So let's bring that in, subtract. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so we'll maybe just name this cone cutout. Okay, so that's all those bits. So that's kind of like the basic shape. So we're going to call this one hull, because that's the main hull of the ship. We're going to copy this. Actually, before we copy it, let's add a smoothing on there. So let's add a smoothing. I'm going to give it a voxel distance of 1, and I'm going to turn the strength down to 50, I think. Delete that copy. So that's the one with the smoothing added on. Now I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to call this one cone. So this is just that kind of nose cone at the top, and we can delete all of these bits apart from the hull and that cone cut out, and then I'm going to change that to intersect, so that gives us our cone at the top. I'm going to copy again our hull, and then this one I'm going to call windows. Now for the windows we don't need cut out at the top. We want the 2 windows, and we want the cutout as well. we don't need the cutout at the bottom. So for this one, actually what we should probably do is group these. We'll call those windows. Put them underneath the smoothing, and I'm going to make that a intersect. Put it underneath, and then we're going to, and then we've got this circular cutout. So basically that's cutting out. If I was to turn that off and hide it, you see we'd get those pipes running all the way across. So we want that cutout on the inside. So that is that part, and then I want to kind of make this kind of blast shield part section at the bottom. So I'm going to copy that hull again, and I'll call this blast shield. I mean, this isn't scientific, this is just what looks nice. And we'll go into that side view, and now might be a good time just to actually compress these items a little bit. We can change the adaptive sampling of the voxel range. I'm going to put that up to like 1.5%, just reduces the amount of polygons. And I'm going to make these objects all editable, apart from our blast shield, so I'll give that a second. So for this blast shield, I can get rid of the windows. I want the cutout. Don't need the cone cutout, we just need this one at the bottom. I'm going to make that about 70 in height, and then I'm going to turn these off, and then I'm just going to move this up. I kind of want it to see where I want it to sit, probably about there. Turn that back on again. I want a kind of a bit of a gap at the bottom, and I want to change that cube to intersect. Go to Gouraud shading mode so I can see it there. And what I'm going to do is I want it obviously to stick out a bit more, be a bit fatter, so I'm going to add on a reshape layer. And actually I'm going to leave that at 5 where that is. I'm just going to move that cube up just a little bit more, so we get like this kind of metal section and then a little bit of kind of the hull shape underneath. Now for these fins, I'm going to go into front view. I'm actually going to make that blast shield section editable. What I want to do is get the pen tool, and then I'm just going to, I don't know, pick a point up here, and I'm just going to follow the line of the rocket. So I'm just going to pick a point there, pull out the Bezier tool, and then pick another point and drag, so kind of get like a nice clean curve. And then I'm just going to add maybe another point here, another one like about here, and then I'm going to add it together. So we've got now like a loop. So if I let me group all of these objects together, and we'll call this rocket, and hide that, and you can see we've got this spline shape, and then we can just tweak these Bezier handles. So we zoom in, I'm just going to hold down shift and move this handle. I just want it kind of go straight across, and then this point, just move that up a tiny amount, and then these two, I probably need to pull this all the way down. So we've got something that kind of looks like this little wing. Now I just want to shift selected, just make sure that that is kind of reasonably smooth. And then for that spline, I'm going to change the angle to 0 to give us more points on there. I might actually change this to uniform up this. Just want that to be a nice smooth curve. Okay, so with that done, let's turn our rocket back on, and with that spline I'm going to reset the axis of the center. That just centers it. Actually I will hide this again, and I'm going to get an extrude and let's have a look. So I'm probably going to extrude this by like 30, and I'm going to group this object and call this call it wing, and I want it to be centered. So the reason why I've grouped this is so I can use change the axis center. So I'm just going to move that up by 15, so then I know that's centered, and I can press PSR. Now that is centered. And this is so I can duplicate it around the object. So around the rocket. So bring the rocket back in, get a cloner, put the wing in the cloner. I'm going to make that a radial, and then change it to XZ, yeah. And we only need 4. The radius I'm going to make 0. And then what I'll do is actually go to this front view, and because our extrude object is within this folder, we can actually, you know, move this here. So I'm just going to kind of adjust this. I'm just going to push it out, pull it down, pull it in again a little bit, something like that. So we've got kind of our rocket shape. Then grab that cloner. I'm just going to rotate that through 45 degrees, like that. And you could probably put some caps on here, to give it like a smooth edge, but I do like the look that you get from the volume builder, so I'll probably add that on. I might just make these a little tiny bit shorter, so I'm just gonna grab those points at the bottom and just bring that up a tiny amount, like that. And then I'm going to get a volume builder and mesher, throw that in there, take this voxel size down to 2. I'm going to add some smoothing on, so you know, just smooths off all those edges quite nicely. So that is kind of the shape of our ship, and you could extend the wings out a little bit, or I could extend the wings out a little bit. So I might just go to our spline, just grab, so I don't mess this up, let's just set the rotation back again. Just going to set that to 0, turn these off, and then, you know, I might just pull, with the shift selected, you know, I might just pull these out a little bit more, so they're kind of a bit more obvious, a bit more bulbous. Turn those back on, and actually I'll just rotate this through 45 degrees. Oh no, it's been object mode. So there is the model of the ship. So now we can just start animating it. So the first thing I'll do is go into the front view. Well, it's actually the side view, but we'll call it the front. And I'm going to get a pen, and I'm just going to create a line. And this is kind of going to be the line that the flames follow. So I'm going to call this flames line, and I'm going to get a MoGraph cloner, add a sphere. I'm going to make this like about 15 in size, and then under clone I'm going to change this to object, and our object is the flames line. I'm going to up the amount on here to something higher, like 300. Then I am going to MoGraph random vector, and under the parameters I'm going to leave position all at 50, and scale I'm going to add in a 1, or we'll change it to absolute. Okay, so now we've got this kind of random bunch of blobs coming out, and this is going to be the flame. So what we want to do is, let me just change this to random flame actually, because we're going to need something for the stars as well, and we'll call this flames. And we'll get another MoGraph effector, we'll get a plane effector, turn off position, we'll turn on scale, we'll turn on uniform and absolute, and we'll say -1. And then under fall off we'll get a linear field. Let's have a look. Yeah, let's rotate this, that's it, by 90 in object mode, and we'll leave the scale as is. I mean, we could make it a little bit bigger. What's that? Making that about 140. Let's call it 140. Bring that down a tiny amount. Okay, and color-wise, I don't want the color to be affected by this effector, so let's just turn that off. We can hide the field. It's gonna group all of these objects and call that flames. These I'm going to make editable. We'll call those wings. I'm going to throw everything into here. So we've got one object with all of that in there, and under flames I can actually hide that line, we don't need it. So to animate the flames, what we need to do is I'm going to go into project settings, I'm going to change this to 25 frames per second, 100 frames, and I am going to use the offset to animate these. So frame 0, I'm going to set 0% and 100, 100. Let's go to our timeline, and I'm going to make these linear. I press play, see it animating, but it's moving quite slow. It's doing what we want, but flames wouldn't go that slow. So what I might do is just change the offset. As long as you're in like 100, 200, 300, then it will do a loop. So let's change this to 200 and see how that looks. Yeah, that's better. And another way around this actually is we could extend this line so they have to travel a little bit further, and that gives us more speed. So let's change it to that. Okay, we'll do the materials at the end, so we'll set up the whole animation and then we'll do the materials. So to do the stars is kind of similar to doing the flames. So I'm actually going to copy all of the flames, and I'm going to call this stars, and I'm going to use a line again, but we're going to move it back so it's kind of in the background of our scene, like behind the rocket. Oh, in the background. Oh, that's the background. My positions seem to be all off. Okay, so I'll move it to, like, say here, and then this line, I want the stars to obviously not be seen popping in and popping out. So let's move this line up, and then let's move it down. We don't need, this is kind of duplicated all the objects we use for the flame, so we don't need this linear field. We don't need that plane as well. We want the stars to be probably a lot smaller, so let's just change this to like 2, 3, something like that. And then for the randomness, I'm gonna change that to, let's say, like 2000. There you go. And then on the Y we'll say like 100. Maybe we'll say like 300 on the Z axis. So this will be kind of a star loop that's going to be in the background, and I might just bring this a little closer. Maybe we'll do it there. And what I'm going to do is, when we go into Octane, we're going to kind of put a depth of field on the camera, so the stars are going to be blurred out. But we're already set up with the animation we did, so you see our stars already animating. But I might actually, because the stars are in the distance, they should be going slower. So I mean, theoretically they wouldn't move at all because they're so far in the distance. But well, for nicety's sake, I'm gonna make them move, but just make them move slower. So I'm change that to 100. There we go. And then what I might do is bring in a camera, and I'm going to put an Octane tag on it so I remember to do that. And then with this camera, I think I'm going to render this for this tutorial, so I'm going to make it 1920 by 1080. In my original Instagram post it was 1000 by 1250. Let's have a look. I'm going to rotate this camera a little bit so our spaceship is kind of flying through space. There we go. And then our stars, I think I will up this count to something high, like 2000. And let's make sure we don't have it popping in or out. So that seems to be working. And so we've got our stars, our ship. Now I just want to add on some additional animation to the ship. So let's go to the rocket. I'm going to add a vibrate tag, which I used in the last tutorial quite a lot. Go back to the first frame. I'm going to change these positions. I just want to kind of give it an up and down wobble and a slight side to side, and a frequency of 0.25. So over 4 seconds it will do a whole loop basically. And I'm going to add on a little bit of rotation. going to make this different, like 0.5, and just give it a tiny bit of rotation. So we play that through. See, now we've got the rocket is kind of pushing forward a bit and pulling back, pushing forward and pulling back. And one more additional piece of animation. We get the whole rocket. And I'm going to rotate it. So let's go to coordinates. Set a keyframe. Go to the end frame. I think I can change this to 360. That's going a lot higher than expected. Position off for the minute, but we've got our rotation on. Little wobble. So the rotation is a linear rotation. Then back on the first keyframe, let's enable position again, see what happens. All like cough. You might not have this trouble, but if you have the same problem, then you'll know why. What I'll do is actually group everything within the rocket, and then within the rocket, that's where I'm going to put the vibrate tag. Add on the pulse, and then we'll enable that option was 2 and 0.5. So this, yeah, so that's doing it now. So see, we've got that up and down rotation. That was straight. Tame window. I'm going to change this to path tracing. I'm going to change my camera so our rocket ship is kind of centered. I might actually kind of move it so we're kind of looking down, so it's kind of flying past us a little bit. Maybe a little. Actually, I like changing the camera to tele lens. I kind of like. Okay. Right, so let's bring, or maybe like a very dark blue. And this is our space, or sky. Set that to render, see what we're looking at. Yeah, there's no light, so we'll call that space. I actually downloaded these files from Polygon, and they're free files. Let's bring that in. That just gives us some kind of overall light. Right, and then what I also want to bring in is Octane Daylight, and this is going to basically add a sun into our scene. Now, because I want to use the HDRI to get reflections on our sprite, and that will actually bring in the HDRI. So we want to set, yeah, be something like that. Materials. Let's get an Octane glossy material. Let's add this. Let's look at our rocket. I want this to be on the. Let's put that into the diffuse. I'm going to go from kind of a something like that. See, it's currently sideways. And then change projection. There you go. So I've rotated that from the Z through -90. So you see we've got the dark at the top and the light at the bottom. Might change again. I've downloaded these, or you can download this from Polygon. So let's whole thing. It's not reflective at all. Let me just turn on this. And what I want to do is make that basically crunch this so it allowed some shininess through. So I think I'm going to need to bring this black all the way down. See now, you can see that roughness on there. I want to kind of, and I just want to kind of increase it in the Y. So I'm going to increase it by 5 streaks running down. Maybe 5 is enough actually. And then maybe we'll change this to like 0.5 in both of these, so they're kind of thinner. Now, next thing I want to do is copy this and do the other color, kind of the caps and the wings. So let's go to the diffuse gradient. I'm going to make this more of like a tealy color. So bring this along here, and then I'm going to drag that onto the cone and the wings. So I've got that teal color on there, and I want to change maybe the strength of that. Let's just make sure that it's actually we're getting that gradient. We don't seem to be getting it, so let's see what's going on. Try and neaten this up so it makes some sort of sense. Reduce the scale. Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, that's got the gradient on there now, but maybe it's not super obvious. Maybe what we want to do, and then maybe bring up this darkness a little bit. So you see we get a little, I'm going to call this windows. We'll drag that onto those windows. So maybe like 0.1. And we're going to add a light inside, so they're kind of a bit trim. And maybe make this like the density down to about 3, so it's quite low, so you can see it there, but it's very dark. What I'll do is we create a sphere, and then I know it's in the middle of the hull. I'm going to move it up to the top of the object here, like inside the ship. I'm going to kind of make a light dome inside the ship that will give off some light. So let's just call this light, and I'll just save this. And let's create a diffuse material. I'm going to call this light to see light up on the inside. So if we animate around, yeah, we can see it's lighting up. So we could maybe up that, like surface brightness, might brighten it up here, and maybe we'll make that like 150. Right, so for the flame, the first thing we have to do is select the cloner for the flames, and we're going to add a MoGraph shader, and then for that shader, under shading, we're going to add a gradient, and this is just basically to give us the information to pass these objects. So that's all we need to do for that, and we want color mode to be affect a color. Oh, scale here, we want to turn that off. All we want to do is affect the color. We'll call this flames. Let's drag that on to the flames, and we go into the flames. Let's go to the node editor, and then we want a gradient. Bring that in, and then now I'm going to do this so we can see what's going on at the same time. So I'm just going to shift stuff around. Probably make this smaller much at the moment. So let's just try and change some colors. So let's go into the low preset. I don't think I want it white at the top because we're going to add on glow. So I'm going to make it like yellow to red by the bottom. Okay, I'm not going to bother with a black. I think that's probably, yeah, that's probably enough. So now we want to add on this emission, so we get this kind of nice glow as well. So what we're going to do is add on another gradient. Let's bring that in. And probably another color shader actually. So I think we can just copy this, take that into this gradient. I'm going to pump this into the emission. Actually, I need to add that on. So go to emission. We're going to create a texture emission. Yeah. And the gradient is going to be the texture. And our texture is just going to go from white to black. You see here at the moment, see it's like super bright. So we can just bring up this black. So you see now we have this kind of brightness coming out of the ship, and then it's kind of, as they come out, it kind of disappears. So, and then as we animate through, you see we'll get these kind of sparks of these bright emissions coming out. So let's just save that, and we'll set up the camera to kind of make all this look nice. Oh, and you see it's actually lighting up the inside of the ship. So what I might do is just get a quick cylinder, put that underneath that light, the PSR light, because we know that's in the center. I'm just gonna literally block off the bottom, so I'm just gonna make that smaller, just block off the brightness from those at the bottom. Let me just go into another view. We're gonna need to be in a perspective. Yeah, that's it. Okay, and we're going to want to kind of just try and hide this a bit, and maybe we'll get that flames line and maybe move them down a bit, just so it doesn't kind of totally brighten up the inside. There we go. So I just kind of want a bit of light. I don't want it to be completely blown out. And then maybe that top light we could turn down. Maybe I'll put that down to like 90. Just want some light in there. So the one material we've got left is just this band around the edge. So let's go to, let's create a metallic. And then let's go to the roughness and bring in an image texture. Actually, no, let's go to normal. And then we'll get an image texture. And again, this is something I downloaded from that Polygon set. So we've got this normal for this, this shape. Oh, I need to put it on our blast shield. It's quite big. So let's make the roughness. I want this to be quite rough, so like 0.2, and then I want this to be quite small. So let's go to that normal, go to the UV transform, and I'm going to scale this down to like 0.25. There we go. So kind of got this. Actually, maybe smaller than that. So 0.15. Yeah, so I've just kind of got this kind of material running along there, and I actually might make the roughness like 0.4. Yeah, so it's quite rough. Just an extra bit of like detail on there. Okay, so now we can kind of look at like the camera look of this. So let's concentrate over here a bit more. So if we go to the camera, I'll drag this out. Under fin lens, let's go to depth of field. I'm going to leave the stars actually as they are because they're getting lit up by that Octane daylight that we've got. I might make them a bit smaller. I don't think they need to be that big. I might go, let's say 1.5. Yeah, because we're going to blur them. So let's, under depth of field, I'm going to turn off autofocus, and then the aperture, I'm going to change that to something. I'm going to go super wide to begin with, like 20, which is far too much. Get our focus tab. I'm just going to click on the hull of the ship, and you see it's selected here. In older versions of Octane, you don't get this option. It will just select wherever you click. So I'm going to click hull, and then you can see we're blurring out that background. I think I'm going to up this even more, like 40. I just want these background stars to be really blurred out. And also we see we're starting to get a bit of blurring on the bottom of the flames there. I think it looks quite nice. Might make that 45. Okay. And then under camera image, I'm going to turn that on. I'm going to use the AI denoiser for when I render. That kind of speeds up rendering. And under the response, you see we've got these different options, these lookup tables. We can kind of have a look through here and kind of see one that looks nice as a starting point. Got these different kind of color settings. I think I'll prefer something like this, and then you can play around with your exposure and the gamma. And this is something you could do in post, but the nice thing about Octane is it allows you to do it actually in the browser in Cinema. Okay, so that's cool. So I'm kind of liking that. And then under post-processing, I'm going to enable that, and I'm going to up this bloom power. And you see now that gives us this glow on here. And what you can do is I'll make it super bright. So I think that is kind of about it for this. And I think now I would just set this to render. If I go into my settings, I'll probably set this to something like, I know, 750. I'll set these to both to be 10. One on the GI clamp, and I'll probably turn on adaptive smoothing. So that's it. So that is it for this tutorial. I hope you found this useful. I hope I see some rockets on Instagram. Please tag me in. Okay, until next time, I'll see you soon. Okay, thanks. Bye.